Oh, add for stream. Right, what have I done? I've not pressed the right button. Have I pressed the right? Yes, we're back. Hello, everybody. It's Tuesday night. It's Tuesday night, except that it's not. It's Saturday night. This is the Great British Cheese Weekender. This is our contribution to improving the lot of a lot of small cheesemakers and generally promoting the fact that cheese is beautiful. Cheese is very beautiful, and we know that the British cheese renaissance, something that kicked back to the sort of 1970s with the likes of Randolph Hodgson and Patrick Rance, who really developed the cheese in the UK from a very poor start that we were sitting in the 50s and 60s, and created the cheeses that we have in the UK right now. We have in the UK nearly 1,200 cheeses. That's more than the French. Don't tell them. It's more cheese than the French. To be fair, they've got more cheesemakers than us. A lot of their cheesemakers, in a very unimaginative way, are all making the same cheese. What's that about? Right, whereas we in the UK have just done a proliferation of astonishing cheeses, which is why tonight we've got on a specialist, Ruth Ruskin, from the Fine Cheese Company. She knows so many of the cheesemakers in the UK at the moment. So we've got her. So let's bring her in. Let's press the magic button. Come on, Ruth. Come on down.
Hello.
Ruth, how are you?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
Thank you very much for joining us here tonight. Is the weather as beautiful? Where are you tonight?
I'm in, it's a little village near Bath called Hallavington. I'm in the middle of nowhere. It's very nice.
Okay, that's good. I think that's the right place. I've heard there's a little bit of trouble out there. I don't know what's going on, but the middle of nowhere seems like the perfect. Okay. So where do you spend your day? Sort of, I'm assuming Bath, perhaps?
So we have our maturing rooms just outside Bath. It's about 20 minutes up the A46, just near the M4.
Near the Marshfield ice cream people.
Exactly, just near the Marshfield ice cream people. Yes, so that's where we keep our cheese. So that's where I'm based.
Okay, well, let's bring in guest number 2. I can see him sitting there nervously trying to look cool. It's the grandfather of cheese, the Mick Jagger of curd. Let's bring in Jamie Montgomery. Woo!
Hey.
How are you, Jamie?
All right, thank you. Yeah.
So you're in South Cadbury right now?
Yeah, live in South Cadbury. We make the cheese in North Cadbury, which is about a mile away.
Yeah, I know you well, obviously. And the A303 goes right between the two, like a croquet ball in through the hoop, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It splits us completely in half.
And I'm not wrong in saying that your brother Archie has a habit of building little statues out of straw bales.
Yeah. So when we've got plenty of straw, we've got something worth building. I think the last big one was Kate and Will's wedding, which is going back a bit. But we built a complete Buckingham Palace with a veranda with all of the royals waving, and we have a huge hand waving on the side of the road. And if there were any accidents, it was nothing to do with us.
I'm sure. A disclaimer at the bottom. Yes, other straw statues are available. So if people know the 303, that is where one of the greatest cheddars, one of the greatest cheeses in the UK gets its made. Now, let's bring in the fantastic Tracy, who keeps us on the straight and narrow. Tracy, you there tonight?
I'm here. I'm not sure about straight and narrow tonight, Charlie. I'm sorry. It's been a long weekend.
You've been the midwife for the British Cheese Weekender. You have been the one holding court. So catch us up with what's going on.
Okay, so we're on day 2 of the British Cheese Weekender. It's all been going really well. It's been awesome, absolutely awesome. Excuse me.
Oh, don't cough.
Oh, don't cough.
Don't cough.
Little drink.
That'll help.
It's been awesome. We have been so privileged. We're part of this amazing cheese community in the UK, and all of our cheese experts from Scotland to Northern Ireland to Wales have all contributed and offered their time up for free to deliver free masterclasses across the Friday, Saturday and Sunday of the bank holiday weekend in a mission to support small cheesemakers and to get people buying British cheese during the lockdown and beyond and beyond and beyond.
So this is the brainchild of Pat McGuigan, is that right?
Yeah, sure. So Patrick and I were inspired by Tuesday night is cheese night, really. I think Patrick's
by the way. On my program.
So we, well, you and I started the Tuesday night is cheese night because we were really missing our Academy masterclasses when we get loads of our cheese community together.
What's up, Tracy, I'm interrupting you. From Amy Hancock, there's Jamie. He's so dreamy.
I was so hoping you hadn't seen that.
No chance.
We've got competition. We had Gil from Gouda the other day, and on the dream take, I think that he's competitive with you, but so anyway, thank you, Amy. You've got a blush out of us. And we've got Pat McGuigan popped in to say hello. Pat, the godfather of cheese on this occasion, is really brought the British Cheese Weekender into being. And when I say he's done it like at short notice with Tracy, I mean, we're talking, this is 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, it's probably about 3.5 weeks ago. Patrick phoned me and said, "Oh, should we do? What about if we support the British cheesemakers and we normally have London Cheese Month and we have loads of different things going on with that and create some press and get the public interested." And he said to me it would be like 3 or 4 masterclasses a day. Well, we've got 12 a day, every half hour on the every half hour. From
Anybody that thinks that no one's got anything to do.
I know. So phenomenal. It's been brilliant.
Let me tell you about the format for tonight. We actually haven't got an hour, but it's going to be about 30 minutes, 35 minutes of we're taking any questions that anybody's got out there. It might be the obscure, it might be the obvious, but we have the answer, or at least we think we do. So bring on the questions. Tracy, have you got your little bell?
No, I haven't got my bell. It's in the other room. I've moved rooms because there was a massive thunderstorm here just now. So I haven't got the bell, but I'll just wave at you.
Who's Sarah, Queen of Cheese Peterson? Loving the title, Sarah. Liking Queen of Cheese. Bring it on.
Sarah's one of ours. She's one of ours. She's one of the fold.
I love Queen of Cheese. Bringing that on. We've got Lincolnshire. We've got Prague. We're loving Prague. Tracy is a human diamond. Oh, Patrick's back. Okay. Now, we're going to start by saying that we've got everyone, all the people here have got myself, Ruth, Jamie, and Tracy. We've all brought a cheese, not necessarily our favorite cheese, but cheese that we want to just chat about. So, Ruth, do you want to start off at 10? A nice, easy question. What cheese is on your plate in front of you?
Okay, so I have got St. Jude and Stilton. So you'll know, as a cheesemonger, you can't have favorites. You can have maybe 20 or 30 favorites, but you can't have favorites. It's too hard. There's so many amazing cheeses. So I thought I'd bring cheeses that meant something to me. So I've got Stilton, and the reason I've got Stilton is that the guy who makes Stilton, who you all know, Joe Schneider, is the reason that I work in cheese. He gave me my first cheese job.
Really?
When I moved from London to the countryside, when I got married, my husband was setting up an organic market garden. I didn't know what to do with myself. And Joe lived a couple of doors down, said, "Look, while you're trying to decide what to do with your life, come and help me. I need a pair of hands to help me make cheese." So I went and helped Joe make cheese for 2 months and fell in love with cheese. I mean, I liked it already, but I never really thought you could make a career out of it. Just totally fell in love with it. Making cheese, as any cheesemaker will know, is extremely hard work. And we were making a cheddar style, so it was very, very physically hard work. And Joe will tell you that I ended up being a bit of a wuss, and it was just pretty hard. So I moved into buying and selling cheese because you get all the fun of trying all the different cheeses and getting to know all the different people. And there's just a lot fun in that.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Yeah.
I looked at making cheese. I made cheese with a lady called Frances Wood, Alan Wood, down at Sheffield. I hope I'm allowed to say this on air, but she's mad as a box of frogs, and she made buffalo cheese.
Not sure if you are.
Sold it now. Extraordinary. The one thing I learned was let's sell cheese. That's got to be easier.
I love selling cheese. That's a lot of fun. And then the other one, St. Jude, I brought because if I were to be a cheesemaker again, that would be the cheese I would like to make. So it's one of my favorites, but it's just the one that I kind of feel a real affinity with in actual making of it. Not great, is it? You can't really see.
No, that's good.
It's little, it's wrinkly, it's delicate.
Stop talking to Jamie like that.
So those are my cheeses.
Cool. Jamie, what have you got?
Because it's basically mostly nearly always all I have in the fridge. I have our cheddar and I have our Ogleshield, which may not be quite so familiar.
I'd like to tell our wonderful viewers that I've been to supper at Jamie's house several times. And it's got to the point where his lovely wife Ziz kind of likes it when someone brings another cheese into the house.
Yeah,
there is.
It's the only way it ever happens.
I think Tracy, you've got a particularly nice non-cheddar there.
Yeah, sure. I've got a question for Jamie though. While he's in the zone. So Kevin is asking, what rennet do you use? You may not want to answer the next one. Where do you get it? What makes you decide which rennet to use?
Yeah, great question. We, if we represent anything, given it the same business, doing exactly the same thing that my grandfather did, we continue to use calf rennet because I believe it just does give us a better flavour. It's a Danish company that make it. I believe most of it comes from New Zealand.
Wow,
that's where it's made. But it is what my grandfather would have done for certain. Still used enormously all across France, and because we are probably the most traditional of all the traditional cheddar makers, I feel it's quite important to hang on to the deeper fundamental things that my grandfather would have done, especially things where we all do actually know it does make a difference.
Definitely.
Ruth,
and
you see a lot of cheesemakers. Are people still mostly using calf rennets, or are they using vegetarian rennets in one form or another?
I would say most cheesemakers use vegetarian rennet, but a lot of the very, very good cheesemakers use animal rennet. Now that's making judgments, which, it's tricky, I know. But I think a lot of people use vegetarian rennet as a commercial decision. It means it opens their cheese up to more markets. And a lot of people don't feel it makes a difference, but I know a lot of people passionately do believe it makes a difference, and they really do prefer to use animal rennet.
Well, it's a very interesting case of Bill Stansfield, wasn't it?
Yes.
When he was using vegetarian on his Cornish blue, and very successful. But when he moved up to calf rennet, he then won the World Cheese Awards within, I think, 2 or maybe 3 years of making the transfer.
Yeah.
So,
well, then he carried on doing both because there's still a big market out there that want the vegetarian rennet. So he was doing both, but we were buying only the animal rennet because it's quite rare that you get to do that sort of blind tasting of, in theory, the same cheese, one with vegetarian rennet, one with animal. But in Phil's case, the Cornish blue with animal rennet was definitely, it was better. It was deeper. It was richer. It was more biscuity. There was some really good flavors going on in there that you didn't get with the animal rennet. Sorry, the vegetarian rennet.
Yeah.
He
Could have
thinks
been
it
that
takes.
variation, but it was noticeable.
He thinks it takes 2 to 3 weeks.
A few years ago, when the Specialist Cheesemakers Association did their Stilton visit to the whole area, my memory of the dinner was a tasting that Randolph got done of making Colson Bassett with animal rennet. And we all tasted it and we all went, wow.
Can I say that Randolph is Randolph Hodgson, the founder of Neal's Yard Dairy, just for those who don't know. And I'd like to add there, it's good that you do have one memory of that dinner, Jamie, having seen you drink. So
it was quite early on in the dinner, obviously.
The rest is a blur.
Yeah.
So back to you, Ruth. Are you familiar with any British cheesemaker using the cardoon or the vegetable, the thistle rennet?
Well, Mary Holbrook used to use a really traditional cardoon for her cheese cardo. But there's also people using slightly more refined versions, which you're not actually buying the stamens and soaking them yourself. You can buy the powdered. And yes, there's Synodon Hill by Norton and Yarrow, which is a really stunning cheese. And also Charlie Westhead at Neal's Yard Creamery has started doing that as well.
Because before the program began, I asked you one of the most innovative cheesemakers, who are the new kids on the block, and you mentioned Norton and Yarrow. Who are they? What are they doing?
So Norton and Yarrow, they're based just near Oxford, and they started making cheese 2014, so not very long ago. They just made a big lifestyle decision to change what they were doing, buy a couple of goats, and started making raw milk cheeses. Their first one was Synodon Hill, and they're building up their own goat herd, and meanwhile buying milk in as well. So they're trying to sort of increase the ratio of their milk to bought milk all the time, and they're getting higher and higher now. I think they've got about 100 goats now, and they started with 5 or 6, and they've had 2 children along the way as well. So they're very, very busy. I'm sure. So it's a busy life being a cheesemaker and keeping your own animals. And I'm sure Jamie knows that.
That does bring us to the subject of raw milk. I mean, Jamie, you've been using unpasteurized milk from the get-go for 115 years or whatever it is you've been making cheese now.
Absolutely, yeah. So if it ain't broke, we try not to fix it. But we are lucky making a cheddar, clearly. It's the most bomb-proof, in terms of the safety-wise, of all the cheeses. So the soft cheese guys, anybody doing that with raw milk, I take my hat off to them. We're doing it with the Ogleshield, which is it just takes a bit more testing, just to be more sure that we're doing a good job all the time. But we can keep it pretty good.
So I mean, managing raw milk is about managing bacteria numbers, sort of counts and that kind of thing. Just explain that to people so they understand how about you are basically trying to control chaos.
Well, I keep going back to really the fact that if our milk was sterile, there wouldn't be any point in using raw milk. So you're right, we're trying to manage the chaos, but we want a load of chaos. But what we don't want is anything in there that's got in there from not really the cow. Most of the stuff that's inside the udder of a cow is pretty good. It's mostly the stuff that gets in later that causes us trouble. And so managing that chaos, we want flavors from the milk. It's what gives complexity to our cheeses. And so we want our cheese to contain lots and lots of lactobacilli, which live inside the udder, all the sort of bugs which give us great flavors, and our milks are full of those sorts of bugs. And we've done trials of looking at how many different types of bacteria in the milk, and we love the fact that there's lots of different ones. But keeping a tabs on the ones that aren't supposed to be there, that's our job.
And Charlie, you said control chaos, but I kind of think you're harnessing it. You know, you're not trying to control it, damp it down, keep it like.
I'm a chaos fan. You know,
there's great stuff in there, and that's what you're harnessing, bringing it in and developing it on. That's the goal, isn't it?
I couldn't agree more. I'm a huge fan of raw milk, but I think that there are so many avenues to bring flavor into cheese. Sometimes I think that it's overemphasized. You know, I mean, Jamie in his store has had 100 years of making cheese come through that store, and every day something adds to the biome that sits there, the yeasts and the molds and the cool stuff, which means if you take one of Tom Calver's cheeses and put it in Jamie's store, it's gonna taste different. It's not, there's a lot that you're harnessing, that fantastic biological activity that isn't just coming from the raw milk. And I think that maybe it's the fact that it has this hint of danger, if I can put it that way, which we all love, that has brought attention to the raw milk element of cheese making. And Jamie, you bored me senseless about the importance of the feed you give your cows to bring flavor into the cheese.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
don't start him off now.
I only bore senseless on the fact that we don't really know. People ask me, what is it about your farm or what you do that makes Montgomery cheddar so special? And my answer is, I really have no idea. I don't know the answer to that question. And so every time, if we change something, it's got to be very, very, very slightly. And we will be watching really carefully to see whether it makes any difference. And there are lots of feeds which I will simply not feed to my cows. And protected fats being sort of the one that springs to mind. So anybody who's driving cows to produce lots and lots of milk, the most concentrated form of energy you can give them, and all the really big sort of industrial farms will be feeding protected fat. But that fat almost, without being digested, almost goes straight into the milk. And so your milk finishes up with this stuff in it, which isn't really metabolized by the cow.
So you call
it this protected fat.
Yeah, what feed is that?
It's a prill, so it's generally palm oil, and they put a coating of protein around it to stop the cow from, so it gets direct to the cow. No, it's industrial farming. And so there are lots of things, there's certain things like that which I will not do because I can see that is going to affect the cheese. So that thing about being as traditional as we can possibly be, that goes right through to the type of thing that we're going to feed the cows as well.
So your family motto is, just as you said, don't fix it if it ain't broken.
Well, don't make any changes.
At all.
At all.
That's it. It's working. So.
Can I ask you a question? There's a few questions here from our viewers as well, Jamie, for you. But can I ask a question? So when you carried on making cheese during the war years, or the family, obviously you're not that old, they did they change anything then? Or they carried on with the same recipe, were you cloth binding?
You're right in mentioning the war, because we had to stop. So we were stopped all the way through rationing.
Why?
The government.
I thought you carried on.
No.
Is that one of those?
That's when cheddar making just completely crashed, because there were something like was it just under 400 cheesemakers just before the war?
Cheddar makers.
Cheddar makers. Well, in Somerset, it was going to be cheddar, and because there wasn't any market for the milk, nobody was coming this far down to the southwest to take it up to London. How would they do that? And so, but after the war, Milk Marketing Board existed. You only made cheese before because you had all this milk that you'd had to do something with. And so suddenly after the war, you have a choice. And so it was only the slightly, I mean, you talked before about mad as a box of frogs. I fundamentally believe that most of the cheesemakers I know are just a little bit mad. And thank God my grandfather was barking, absolutely crazy. He looked at this whole idea of, we made cheese maybe 9 years, the gap, but he could remember what they were doing before, and he knew exactly what he wanted to go back to doing.
So there was about
and was passionate. Yeah, there was a gap, but he was passionate about making it exactly the same way as they did before.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So can I ask a couple of other questions? We've got Avril on, who's our training partner in Ireland, in Southern Ireland. She's asking, do you export to Southern Ireland?
We don't handle any export ourselves. Everything exported, all the Montgomerys exported goes through Neal's Yard Dairy. Sheridan's used to buy direct from us. And so I'm not sure whether Sheridan's are still getting some from Neal's Yard or not.
Okay. So she needs to talk to Neal's Yard then?
Yeah.
Cool. And then this is quite an in-depth question from an anonymous. Have you got experience of, maybe this was one for Ruth, GM veggie rennet? Does it have the same enzymes in it as animal rennet?
Well, so it produces chymosin, which is it's created in the laboratory, and it does the same job. Jamie, do you know if chymosin is exactly the same enzyme that's produced in animal rennet? I don't know if it's exactly the same, but it's certainly similar and does the same thing. So with animal rennet, it'll be from the stomach of the calf that hasn't been weaned yet. So it's only ever consuming milk, so it has to break down milk. So with animal rennet, there's the enzyme that's inside the stomach. And then with the laboratory made rennet, they've just managed to create the same enzyme within the laboratory environment. So,
yeah.
Do you want more questions?
Sorry?
Do you need a couple more questions, or we? Sorry.
I noticed somebody asking where the flavour comes from in pasteurised cheese, because I do think it's important to say that there are incredibly brilliant pasteurised cheeses. I wouldn't deny that. So, your Colston Bassett and your Tunworth and your Roll Right are all pasteurised cheeses, and they're brilliant. So I think the quality of the cheese is very dependent on the skill of the cheesemaker and on the choices that they make. They're having to choose what starter cultures to put in the milk to create their cheese. And then they're making countless decisions at every point. When do you cut? How small do you cut? When do you drain? So there's so many decisions that have to be made when you're making cheese that will affect the outcome. And people can make a bad raw milk cheese, and people can make a brilliant pasteurized cheese. I think for raw milk is it's a bold choice. Like Jamie said, if you're making a soft cheese or a blue cheese, it's a very bold choice to do that. So that makes me interested. That makes me want to try it, because the cheesemaker's obviously got some faith in what they're doing. So then I want to try it and see what it's like.
I lean in on this. I think that raw milk really has the biggest impact in long keeping cheeses. I think the like the cheddars is where it's at. And the reason I think that is that while those young cheeses are very difficult to make and really challenging in lots of ways, there are so many other flavor influences at that age, I think, that you can and things you've got to control, that it's not as important. If I was to say what's the most important place to preserve raw milk, I think it's in the Cheddars. I think it's in the Gruyères. I think it's in the Cheshires. I think that.
I don't agree.
You don't agree?
No, I don't. I'm sorry. Something like
I think you're missing the argument. I think there's a huge difference between the cheeses which rely on the milk for most of their flavour, and there's a whole lot of other cheeses where the things that we do to it, the conditions we keep it in, influence the flavour so much that it is less important. I think Ogleshield is a really good example of that. We make a lot of pasteurised Ogleshield because it makes it just a lot easier to export. And I don't think there is as much difference between the pasteurised and unpasteurised Ogleshield as there would be in cheeses which are not washed, for instance. You go washing the rind of a cheese. It's made from Jersey milk anyway, so it's much creamier. Yeah. We only keep it for 3 months. We're not looking for a lot of flavour inside the cheese other than the creaminess, which is there anyway. And then we go washing it. And so we've got all that lovely pungency that we can create whether it's pasteurised or not. And that goes into the cheese. And so that's the argument for me. If you're going to do lots to it and give it loads of flavour elsewhere, then I don't think pasteurised is as important.
Right. And Patrick is asking, what are the challenges? Now you're talking about Ogleshield and the Jersey cow's milk. Is there challenges with making cheese with the Jersey milk?
Absolutely. Jersey milk is just wanting to go bitter, and it's just one of those things that my mum always used to say. You can't make cheese from Jersey milk. She knew that if you treat it badly, it will go bitter. And we do find if we keep it too long, it will start going bitter under the rind, and bitterness is. I mean, it's a pet hate for me, bitterness anyway, because in cheddar, if I come across bitterness in cheddar, I go, no, just no. And in cheddar particularly, bitterness always tends to be the last flavour you taste. So the length that we keep celebrating in the cheddar, if I've got bitterness there, I can't get rid of it. And so bitterness is bad, and Jersey milk wants to be bitter. So what the hell am I doing? Mum loved her Jersey cows. We have a herd of Jersey cows. We've got to do something. And we've been mad enough to try.
But you're doing well.
Yeah, we're very happy with it. Yeah,
it's doing really well.
Yeah.
We've got another question. I think this might be quite a nice one for Ruth, actually. Louise is asking, do you have any recommendations for enjoying cheese in seasons, by season, so at the moment?
Well, there are cheeses that are just seasonal, but not very many of them. So, we all know that you love your Vacherin Mondor at Christmas. For me, the seasonal thing, yes, the cheeses vary throughout the seasons, but I think it affects me more as in what I want to eat. So in spring, I really want to eat those lactic cheeses, the lovely, bright, fresh cheeses. Whereas in winter, I love a good old, stinky, strong washed rind. So for me, it's more about, when it's warm, I want a lovely fresh cheese. And when it's cold, I want a lovely, hearty, savoury, meaty cheese. But obviously, cheeses do vary a lot throughout the season. But I think that gets quite complicated to sort of try and explain the variations in what happens to the milk. So for me, it's just about what I want to eat, really.
We did some research recently with the Academy on Cheshire, and there was quite a lot of writing about the meadows that ran alongside the rivers up in those areas where they were drawing their milk from. And those meadows were really only accessible in the summer. So they did have summer cheeses in the way that the Europeans in the Alps have summer cheeses up the mountains. We don't experience that anymore as we've got good drainage and agricultural improvement and all that kind of thing. So we tend to have fields sort of overall all 12 months. Do you think that's a loss, that we're missing out on that seasonality?
Is that for me or Jamie?
Oh, Jamie can go in.
But I mean, I guess our pasture land isn't so vastly different as it is, in the Swiss Alps, is it? If you go up, when you have the cheeses that are made just from the summer milk and they're up in the high mountains with all the wildflowers, and then they come down in the winter, it's a bigger change than what we have in some ways. However, I mean, when they go out to grass and when they come in from grass, that makes a big difference to the cheesemaker, doesn't it? That's a really tricky time, that transition. I'm sure you find that, Jamie, when you're going through that transition period of what the cows are eating. But it's sort of more a difficult period, isn't it, in a way?
Yes, the transition is the problem. And I guess the challenge for us has always been trying to maintain that complexity of diet to the cow in the winter. Mm-hmm. And so making good grass silage and keeping that as a good part of the diet is the only way we can hope to maintain it. And there will be people who say that if we wanted to make the greatest cheese, we would be feeding hay all winter. But if we did that, we would lose a lot of colour in the milk because the hay tends to be much paler in the cream. Mm-hmm. And frankly, we would make most years we would make terrible hay, which is my mother was asked by an Italian who came over to check what we were doing, and he asked, did we make good hay? And Mum sort of looked back and said, yeah, of course we made good hay. Once every 5 years.
Yeah. We just don't have the climate for it.
Really terrible. Yeah.
Jamie, do you ever make bad cheese?
Absolutely. Yeah. No, we will make cheeses that I find disgusting. Hopefully not much more than 3 or 4 a year. But if we're not making some terrible cheese, I firmly believe we're not trying hard enough. If we're using raw milk, as I said before, we want that chaos. Every now and then, that chaos is just going to get out of our control, and I've got to live with that. And the industrials go to great lengths to make sure they never make a bad cheese. That's not my thing at all. I think the only way we're ever going to make great cheese is by occasionally making a bad one.
I find that really interesting, because that really suggests that in the balance between art and science, you're an artist.
Well, we try and think of ourselves having a bit of science, but there's a whole lot goes on in milk that we just have no idea. Yeah, you're right. It's try and treat the cows right and hope that it works. Yeah.
So what do you? So 3 or 4 times a year, what do you do with the cheese?
Charlie's going to wheel it and deal it for you now.
If it depends a bit how much it has annoyed me. If it annoys me enough, I have been known to come up with creative ways of getting my own back on it.
Okay. Okay.
That sounds intriguing.
Okay. Cheese Night fans, we're going to follow up on this and see if we can find out what exactly Jamie does to cheese that really gets his wick, and we'll see what we find. Yes. Okay. Ruth, do you find this with other cheesemakers? Is that the more they reach for the skies, the more occasionally they trip over a daisy, the cheesemakers?
Yeah, I think that's true, because if you're looking for standardization and consistency, then you can do it. You can make a cheese that's fine, that's okay, and it'll be fine next week, and it'll be fine the week after. But if you're going to try and make a cheese that's incredible, that's not easy. So there will always be times when it's not quite so good. And as a cheesemonger, I think you have to be quite sensitive and understanding. So sometimes the cheese just isn't good enough to come to us. And it doesn't come to us, not sure what happens, but there we go. But then the cheese that does come to us, it will change. Sometimes, let's say a soft cheese, sometimes there'll be a little bit of problems with the rind. Maybe it's a little bit overreactive. Maybe there's a little bit of slippage. If it's not too much, if it's manageable, and if we can explain it to our customers so that they know what they're getting, so they're not, disappointed, I think that's fine. You're getting something amazing. Sometimes it's incredible, and sometimes it's good. It's never bad. The bad stuff doesn't reach us.
No.
I'm sure there is some bad stuff.
Only show it to you, so.
We doesn't get us.
Drink-based questions. Oh, we're going for this one.
Can we have this? It's like, do you think that climate change is going to affect our cheese making here in the UK?
Probably more for the cheesemaker than me.
Okay. Who knows? Who knows? Yes. That's my first thought would be, if we finished up with a much more Mediterranean climate, we might finish up making a lot more hay, and that would affect what we can make. I dabbled at making a sort of Gruyere type cheese, and we discovered that the attrition rate on that was something like 50% of it blew up like footballs. And I see another question there about blowing in cheese, which it tends to sort of be the story with silage. We have had, cheddar is different. Cheddar has, for 100 or so years, been made with silage, and I suppose the fact that it's cloth bound, the reason we cloth bind a cheddar is because we want it to breathe. And so if we get a bit of gassing going on inside it, it's got to be bad before it actually blows up. The ogle shield, on the other hand, if we get the wrong bacteria in there, it will go like footballs. And we've seen that, and we were able to trace that straight back to the management of the silage pit. And bad silage, yep, it's bad news. But then so's bad hay.
So if we were to get hotter summers, Jamie, you remember that very hot summer we had a couple of years ago? Did you end up with not enough pasture for your cows in the summer when the grass was so dry, or was it okay?
We were okay.
Yeah.
I know, but then maybe that's why cheddar making was in Somerset, because we've got that west facing. If there is any rain at all about, we'll catch it.
Yeah. So it's probably the cheesemakers on the reef might have suffered more.
Yeah. And we don't absolutely rely on grass as our only forage either. I do grow a bit of maize, and so in a year where we get a bit less grass, the maize does well. So we're trying to manage our way through that. If we are going to get drier summers, we can sort of match it by growing something that likes the dry.
Okay, well, talking of being dry, we've got another question here. What's your favorite beverage? Now, this is a leading question, Jamie, because you happen to be drinking something tonight that is one of my favorites. So I'm going to go. I'm going with Ruth first, but then we'll dip into Jamie there.
Right. Okay. So on our farm, here in Somerset. What?
Ruth, go first.
Oh, Ruth, go first. Sorry.
We know what you're drinking, Jamie. It needs to go last.
Okay.
Well, if you're, you know that if you're eating lots of different cheeses, it can get a bit complicated for what you drink because different things go with different things. So I've gone just fairly simple, a nice white, lovely chilled white, but actually gone for an Austrian. So it's quite sort of big flavoured and floral and peachy. So for me, it's going to go with the lactic St. Jude, but it's also going to work with the blue Stilton, because I don't think a red would work with St. Jude, and a really sort of lovely crisp white wouldn't work with the Stilton. So I've gone for a sort of big, peachy floral white.
You've got Stilton in front of you, which is a good example of what Jamie was saying earlier. A raw milk Stilton, if we're allowed to say that out loud.
We're not.
No.
Don't say that. Okay, I didn't say that. Just saying.
No.
Style, method Stiltonese, whatever the phrase is. Method Stiltonese. The chaos that we've been referring to, bring that in Stilton with raw milk, and like, not allowed to call it Stilton. Just saying that a second time, just in case everyone sues me. That is an example of a cheese that really goes like that, and when it's on song, it's awesome.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It can be totally sublime. It's a challenge. So it's not it's not an easy day at the office every day for Joe when he goes in, because it's a challenge. You've got to keep your wits about you, and you were saying about art and science. There's a lot of instinctiveness, but I think Joe's done a huge amount of research as well to really understand his milk and understand the process of making the cheese. But yeah, it's volatile, but it's stunning. So.
Okay, I'll tell you what I'm drinking. I bought a few bottles of this a while back. It's a Languedoc Picpoul, and I've slightly fallen in love with it. I don't really like acidic wines, but this has got really nice liminess, which is one of my favourite flavours, and I'm absolutely loving it. But the cheese I'm having today is a pasteurised cheese from Cornwall. Okay, you guys will get that straight away.
Cornish kern.
Cornish kern.
Thank you very much. Catherine Mead, recent invention. I think she kicked off, it was 2013 making this, but this is a washed curd cheese, sort of kind of like a grandchild of Gouda, although that's probably not fair. And it won the World Cheese Awards in 2017. Am I right about that?
I think so.
2 years ago.
So this was a proper zero to hero cheese, and she had problems with blowing. Jamie, do you remember this?
Yeah.
Maybe you didn't hear it as well. So she had silage issue that blew up and she had to go back to the drawing board and remake her cheese. But when you are starting a new cheese, that's what great cheesemakers do. They work with the seasons, they work with what they've got, and they overcome and they achieve. And she really very much achieved. Now there's a question down there about what is silage, just in case people are unfamiliar. Silage is fermented grass that is carried over from the grass growing times of August and July into the winter to be fed to cows. And it's either wrapped in, I don't know if you've seen them in the fields, people have started using pink to wrap their silage bales, big pink balls in the middle of the fields. Black is the traditional color, but Jamie was saying that you use silage clamps, don't you? So
Yes, we especially for making cheese, we would always only feed clamp silage, something that we put into a concrete-sided bunker, and we can drive tractors over it to squeeze as much of the air out as we possibly can. Because clamp silage, you can get the acidity much better and much quicker than in a bale silage, and so you tend to get a bit of listeria in bale silage. Certainly, when we feed, we do make bale silage for the calves, and they can get listeria in their eyes as a disease, and so they're picking that up from this because it doesn't pickle quite as well as in the bales.
So just to make sure that everyone's clear about this, we're using bacteria to break down and preserve the grass. That's what silage is.
Yeah. So the bacteria produce lactic acid.
Let's go back to what you're drinking, Jamie, because this is one of my favorite all-time drinks made in the UK.
Well, it's not actually made by us, but it contains some of our apples. So on the farm here, we have cider apples, and I don't know whether you can read that. It all looks a bit sort of
right, shiny.
Yeah. Good.
But it's called Pomona, and it's made by the Somerset Cider Company, and they make a brandy, and so they make this in the same way as they would make a port, and so it's not cider, which is all fermented. They take selected apple juice and mix the fresh eau de vie, the pure spirit with it, and then put it in oak barrels for 3 years. And so it comes out much more like a port. It retains the appliness with a nice bit of alcohol heat, and the age sort of smooths it right out. And so there is a sense of terroir.
It's really, really, when you're drinking that at room temperature, because I've drank that with cheese when we've been camping, chilled, and it's beautiful.
Well, I don't want to get.
It's different. It's completely different when it's chilled. Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, it is.
You don't chill Pomona. You don't chill Pomona. You chill the other one. What's the other one called?
Kingston Black.
Kingston Black. You chill Pomona.
You chill the Kingston Black.
You chill the Kingston Black. If you chill the Pomona, you sedimentize out the apple, and you get that sediment down the bottom, and it loses the flavor. So no.
Yeah,
Not if you drink it fast enough. I don't know how quickly Tracy helped you back.
People rarely say I don't think drink things fast enough.
I'm just saying Tracy might drink it before it sediments, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, sometimes when you're camping, you have no choice. It is chilled.
Yeah. Okay. Well, on that argumentative note about something other than cheese, Tracy, do we have any final questions before we sign off tonight?
There was quite an interesting one still going on your drinking. There's the guy called Stuart, and he's asking, is there any cheese that we'd recommend to drink with shots?
I saw that.
Archie, I think Charlie's going to answer this one.
Does he have the most experience?
Yeah, right. I don't know why you think I might be an expert in this particular subject.
Tequila comes to mind.
you have two options with shots, in my opinion. Go very old or very young. Okay, go the freshness of a really good goat's cheese or something really thin just breaks through a shot and it sort of tags on it. But by the time you're into shots, Stuart, let's be honest, it's probably late. Your taste buds are on the fourth round of the track, and you need a brutal bastard of a cheese to break through. So if you can get hold of any Jamie's 24 month or some, or washed rind, actually, Epoisse probably is the good to go. But some of those ones that's got big punch, big numbers, that's where you got to go, and just laugh a lot and liberally throw it at whoever's still standing with you, and drink too many shots, and generally celebrate good cheese and good friends and good wine, and bring it on, basically. That was a bit of a moment. Sorry, enthusiasm.
That's it. It's over. Game over.
Thank you very much for that last question. I'd like to thank all of our lovely guests. Ruth, thank you very much for coming on. You're not encyclopedic.
Love you, Charlie. Love you, Charlie.
Thank you to all your families for letting you stay up at up till 9 o'clock on a Saturday night. Although, as we all know, the days are merging into one. Jamie, thank you for joining us, and Tracy, your company is always keeping us on the straight and narrow. And but most of all, thank you to all the people who are watching, listening, enjoying the love of cheese. Keep supporting all the small cheese makers. Keep learning more about cheese, but most of all, have fun on a Saturday night. So, goodbye from all of us.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ruth.
Bye-bye.
Bye.